And it did work. Awesome. Fortunately, we don't have a large audience to see the brilliance of the button I just pushed that you probably don't care about. And I can't blame you, really. Crystal Briar's here. Jasmine's here. Hello. It's good to see people. I learned something about ADHD and dopamine today. We do reckless things because it gives our brain dopamine. So I had a nice pair of white overalls that are very comfortable. And then I started working with my fountain pens, trying to decide to sell some. And one exploded on my notebook and actually wrote, "Wow, that was lucky. Why am I wearing white while I'm doing this?" But it didn't change anything. And then the pen exploded again. So, yeah, that's where I've been the last half hour, is trying to get those stains out. But I know it was my brain going, wow, this is exciting and fun, wearing white and dealing with fountain pen inks. Look at me go. Hello, Southpaw. Good to see you. And Poe's here, and Kids Are Asleep is here. Thank you, Crystal Briar. I'm really glad you appreciate that button push, because I had to program that button. Not using programming language. But anyway. So yeah, my nice white overalls are possibly house clothes now. We'll see. I was printmaking one night years ago, and my husband walked in and said, "Why are you wearing a white shirt?" Now my overalls are not entirely white. Exactly, Ian. Hey, Lee, my mother would always wear a white top to a restaurant and then order something with red sauce. See, here's the thing I really don't like. You can't feel dopamine. You don't, consciously, you don't enjoy it. Which is why, like, when we're stressed out doing something, when there's a huge deadline and we're totally stressed out working really hard, our brain's like soaking it in like a cat with catnip. But we don't get to feel that. We don't get whatever the hell the brain is getting. It doesn't actually pass it on to us, or it's subconscious. Hey, Jasmine, thank you for the sub. My next hobby should be fabric dyeing. Strangely, I'm not interested in it. Who's calling me and why? I don't know, so I don't care. Wait, did I do that right? I don't know. I'll just hang up. Okay. It's not a stain, it's art. Yes, when it's on your knee. Hey, Devo Spice is here. Underpope's here. Will's here. Good to see everybody. That handy built-in shelf that women usually have. Yes, we used to joke that a friend of mine's breasts were larger because she just kept feeding them. Just drop in the food. But I'll go away from the breast jokes and go into the podcast of today. Right. I'm sitting like Calvin on the front porch waiting for his little beanie because I finally wrote a really long email to my agent yesterday and I'm waiting for a response. I should probably put that in the podcast. So let's get the podcast going. This is I Should Be Writing, Season 22, Episode 10. Hi there. Welcome to I Should Be Writing. This is a podcast and live stream for wannabe fiction writers, and I'm your host, Mur Lafferty. I've written about 8 or 9 books. Why I can't remember the total, I don't know. Maybe I'll put it on the wall. You've written 9 books. I'll do that. Okay, mental note. Anyway, and I've been podcasting since 2004. So, yeah, the credentials are there. Very, very passive voice here. It's still hard to say, like, I am the voice of wannabe writers, or the ones they should listen to anyway. But I have been doing it for a while, so here I am. I usually start with my own accountability, and I've had a lot of personal things come up this week. unexpected things. I'll talk about a couple of them in a bit with the main topic, but focus has not been good. I have been climbing out of a little grief hole that I was in. Am feeling more focused now, not quite so depressed and tired. So that's good. But yesterday I did spend all morning writing up all the projects I have in my head right now that are fighting each other. And I sent those to my agent, and I'm hoping he'll get back to me with an idea of where we should go moving forward. And my kid asked if I should, if I thought I should put them in order of what I'm excited about to best to least. And then I thought, no, because this happened back in, I want to say 2014, 15, somewhere around there. And I sent my editor 3 ideas, and she liked the one she wanted the one I liked the least. And then and that book became 6 Weeks. So I don't really have a good sense about what ideas are good for the market and what aren't. So I'm just putting all the ones I'm really interested to write out there and hoping that he'll get back to me. Hey, Steve, good to see you. And Steve's presence here reminds me that I should tell you guys, RavenCon in Richmond, Virginia, at the end of the month, lost their guest of honor. I believe it was something health related. And they asked me to come in at the last minute. So I will be guest of honor at RavenCon in about 2 weeks, I guess. Is that right? Does that math go? Sure. The end of the month, the last weekend of the month. And then the next weekend, I'm turning around and going to Des Moines to be guest of honor at Demicon, I think it's called. Why is my brain doing a blank? I don't know. Anyway, I think that's right. It'd just be really embarrassing if I got it wrong. So I normally don't like to do 2 cons back to back, and these are 2 cons with me being on for a long time. So we'll see how I do. I may just fall down like when I get home on the 4th, May 4th or 5th. I'll just be lying on the floor, a puddle of goo. But anyway, if you're interested and you're in that area, come by and see me, please. I do have, good, Jasmine's planning on coming to RavenCon. I believe Steve had mentioned maybe going. I would love to see you, Steve. Being a guest of honor for some con is on my writing bucket list. It's an interesting situation. It's an interesting experience. I've started proposing cons do panels about how to be a guest at a con, because no one tells you. And when we look at cons, we think, well, everyone does the same thing, and so guests of honor knows how it works. They know how it works. And that's not the case. It's not at all the case. Different cons have different expectations, and they may not tell you. And I've had some really good experiences, some okay experiences, and one really terrible one. And so I've learned now what to be, what to ask, what will be expected of me. See, sometimes they have a guest of honor panel, and they have somebody from the con interviewing you. But other times they'll just give you a block of time and don't tell you about it until you're like, oh, that's my guest of honor speech that you didn't tell me to write. Okay. At my really, really bad guest of honor experience, I did have that block of time, and I had to wing it, and it was awful. And then the fire alarm went off. I'm sure there have been better timed fire alarms in the history of the world, but personally, that was, the top fire alarm I've ever experienced. But it's often very busy. It's, like, I don't know if it's age or the fact that I was guest of honor, but last year, was it Bubonic-Con? That was 2 years ago. Yeah, it was Bubonic-Con 2 years ago. And I was guest of honor, and I was like, Ursula's going to be there, Kevin's going to be there. I've met TJ Klune. He's a really cool guy. He'll be there. And Connie Willis often comes, and I had this image of like us hanging out in the bar having a drink. And at the end of every single day, I was like in bed with my Switch, falling asleep, and my husband poking me going, put the game away and go to sleep. It's very tiring to be the guest. They want the guest of honor to be on more than everybody else. So it is very time consuming. They may schedule you for more panels than you're able to do. I know people who've had like 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. panels with no meal breaks. Like it's people just not thinking about the needs of the guest of honor and just saying, oh, that'd be good, and that'd be good, and that'd be good, and we'll put them all together. So, yeah, I think I'm doing a panel on that at DemiCon, I believe. And of course, Devo Spice will be at RavenCon too. I can't believe I left you out. I'm very sorry. How many spoons you have that weekend? Fully understandable, Steve. I understand. But it is fun. It is an honor, and they'll usually pay for you to bring a +1, which means even if you don't know anybody else there, you'll at least have that +1 with you. So that's been me. Yeah, I'm still thinking about my email to my agent and hoping he gets back to me. He's usually very quick, but I haven't talked to him in several months, and this was a long email, so we'll see. I had another idea in mind, but, topic for the podcast. But something's been bothering me. And it's ridiculous because it bothers me almost every time I read The Stand. And, it's good enough for me to reread. And it's a brilliant book. And I should just let this stuff stop bothering me. But, Stephen King really likes to injure his characters' teeth. And then barely mention it again. So in The Stand, one of the main characters, Nick, gets punched in the face with a big hand wearing an LSU ring and breaks both front teeth. Horrifying to me in the first place. And then when he gets looked at by a doctor later on, the doctor's like, oh yeah, you're going to lose those. Not like go to a dentist, just those are going to die and fall out. And that's the last we hear. If anybody else meets Nick for the first time and it's their point of view, we don't get, oh, a quiet young man missing 2 front teeth. And I don't know if it's an American dental thing. I've heard other countries put us down for how important we take orthodontia, since it's not actually necessary. People do just fine without it. But I think that it might be my own phobias, but I think that I would notice that right away, that someone was missing 2 front teeth. In the Tommyknockers, a lot of people hate this book. They say it's one of his weakest, but I really liked it. I don't know if it's it's that there's this magical part of your teenagerhood that you can read something that everybody else thinks is crap, but for some reason it resonates with you. I have that with the Tommyknockers and a couple of other earlier Stephen King things. But the Tommyknockers is, as they unearth this spaceship that's been buried for millennia, for some reason, everyone loses their teeth. All of them. And then they, and it's only used as a measure of how much of the alien stuff you've been, sorry, how much of the alien miasma, I guess, that you've been subjected to or exposed to. That's the word I'm looking for, exposed. Sometimes it's like they smiled their big gumless smile. But again, thinking about other people's point of view, and you do get visitors' points of view a little bit here and there. I don't know if you had any family members with no teeth, but both my grandmother and my grandfather had dentures. And my grandfather hated how they felt. And so he never wore his. And my grandmother, would take hers off at night and stuff. And you look different when you don't have your teeth pushing out your lips. But Stephen King never mentions that. Never mentions that, why does everybody look like an old lady? Or how are they eating these things? And this gets stuck in my head. Which kind of got me thinking about other types of injuries that we put our characters through. And I honestly think that at least, sorry, I've said this before, but I am a fan of Stephen King in the 80s and some 90s. I hated Dreamcatcher with such white-hot, wretched hatred that I didn't really continue. I even couldn't get into his opus. What was the Gunslinger? Couldn't even get into that. But sorry. We've got something in chat. Here we go. I'm going to try to catch up. You can love a book and be bothered by things. But yes, that's true. Well, it's that way with almost every Agatha Christie book, actually, because she's not kind to non-white races. And she's not even kind to women. And she's a woman. I love Evil Under the Sun. Except for the very end when two characters get together and he's like, you have to give up your very lucrative business, And she's like, I know, yay! And anyway, painful. Crystal Breyer says, one of the things I most remember about the first Guest of Honor volume was the pain Ned... Oh, Guest of Honor, sorry, we was talking about that. Game of Thrones volume was the pain Ned was in from his broken leg. Broken bones are so often misrepresented as something you can just kind of power through. Yes, I'm going to be talking about powering through soon. But yes, that's exactly it. You appreciated that. Interesting. Okay. Lee... Allow. Okay, sorry, Lee. In a lot of books, I have more of a problem with his women being abused left and right. It was a real surprise to read Holly and finding strong, capable women who were each different from the other, and no magical Negroes. Yes. What is Holly? Is that a Stephen King? You're all ready to watch the whole thing. Well, Fire Rider, we're glad you're here now. Let's not get started on head injuries and the lack of concussions. Yes, exactly. I apologize. I lost my train of thought when I was saying about the Stephen Kings that I've read. But I think he really likes to injure his people. And the shock is in the injury. He likes to tell us exactly how terrible the injury is. And then often it'll not get mentioned again. In Misery, Paul gets his foot cut off. And to King's credit, he does talk about Paul's pain, itchiness, etc. throughout the whole thing, the whole rest of the book. But she also cuts off his thumb. And that's almost never mentioned again. A writer, anybody really, it's like, oh, but surgeon better not hurt his hands because he needs those for his job. I'm like, who doesn't need hands for their job? There are a couple, yeah, but I'd say most of us do. But no, his missing thumb, almost never mentioned. Definitely not mentioned once he gets out. Spoiler alert for Misery, he gets out. But I'm always thinking about his left hand and the missing thumb. Oh, Holly is a recent Stephen King book. Thank you, Underpope. I've heard Holly is a favorite character that he's used before. That is interesting. Will likes Joe Hill's work more. Yes, Joe Hill has some amazing things. That's for sure. And as people in chat have mentioned, sometimes we need to keep the story going. And a concussion that knocks you out is very serious. I know people have gotten concussions and not been knocked out. Head injuries are no joke, but often they're even used for laughs. And people just get up and go, oh, my head, and then go on. No headaches, no blurry vision, no, have to lie in a bed in a dark room for months, which isn't very interesting. And I will say that Suzanne Collins, if you don't know about her history, her father came home from Vietnam very, very damaged, very PTSD. And so PTSD features heavily in both The Hunger Games, which is her big series, but also Gregor the Overlander, her middle grade series. And it is so bizarre seeing kids who've been on a quote-unquote adventure, which is also, danger and violence, which can lead to PTSD, actually dealing with that later. In the second Hunger Games book, why can't I remember it? Catching Fire? Yeah, I think Catching Fire. There's an entire scene with Katniss basically hiding in a dungeon. Not a dungeon, a basement. I don't know why I said dungeon. Hiding in a basement, like dealing with her own misery, and everybody else goes off and rescues the love interest, Peeta. And that rescue is not described at all. We get Katniss's point of view, which is like hiding in a basement, which I don't think was that interesting narratively, although it's probably truer than most people with PTSD. So I would have liked that to be a little bit more. And yes, broken bones are awful. One thing that made me think about it was, if you read On Writing, you get a lot of Stephen King memoir stuff. And he talks about squatting over poison ivy. Now, I know somebody who just got poison ivy. It's not like an itchy rash. It's awful. It's blisters and terribleness that last for days. And a lot of times people will just mention, oh, poison ivy, got a rash, oh no, and then later they're fine. And K. Kimmy says, the problem with treating injuries realistically is that real injuries prevent you from doing things, and that's boring. Exactly. That is unfortunately it. But I would like to say, if you're talking about injuries that actually change your features, people can look at you and say, you've had your leg cut off. Continuing to mention the fact that there's a missing leg is viable in the story. I remember there was when I was teaching at Stone Coast, I had a student who had someone get shot, and it was somewhere in the torso. I can't remember exactly where it was, but it's like the next day they're like sitting up and getting out of bed and even crawling to the top bunk of a double bed or a bunk bed. And I'm like, I'm thinking about all the muscles you need in your trunk to do those things. And if you're shot, you're not doing sit-ups. And I had to say, look, if you're going to give somebody this bad of an injury, they can't just be hopping around the next day. Again, they might get over it faster than normally because narrative, but still, I don't buy that they've been shot if you're going to let them do all of that action. And there's oh hell, what else was it? I'm sorry. I had notes. Oh, right. If you've seen the documentary on Netflix called, I think it's A Good Neighbor, it's a story about the white woman who lived in a mostly black community and shot and killed one of the mothers in the area. I remember seeing the woman was shot in the right shoulder. And I didn't remember this news story. This was like in the news several years ago. I didn't remember this news story. So I was actually surprised when she died. And in my mind, we're like, okay, if you want to give somebody a gunshot wound, but not make it too serious, you put it in the right shoulders, not near the heart, shoulders, the clavicle, that's not clavicle, shoulder blade, that's all really strong. So you can take the bullet there. And no, that's not what happened. Okay, in chat, Kids Are Asleep says, In the Other Lands by Sarah Rees Brennan, that deals with it a lot too. I'm assuming you mean like PTSD? Jasmine, my friend had her eyes swell up from poison ivy. Ick. Yes, I believe that. And I have also seen some very underwhelming representation of chronic pain, which is always disappointing. There was, I interviewed Lily Lanoff a couple of years ago because she wrote a gender-bent, queer Three Musketeers with the main character having a chronic illness. And that was really well done. Will did get stabbed in a fight, but kept fighting in your arm. Wow. Ouch. But adrenaline does think that's, adrenaline does keep you going for a little bit. Sorry, K. Kimmy, your strong feelings about poison ivy got bleeped. Yes. I recognize that your feelings about poison ivy are quite bad. You just got to have them eat a green herb. Yes, exactly. Yes, worst poison ivy bout was weeks of pain and itching and being treated like a leper. Yes, a bullet with a bulletproof vest can be deadly. That's like getting hit in the chest with a sledgehammer, isn't it? Okay, we'll take a break because of the ads. Ads over for you. Okay, good. Okay. So, I think we agree that injuries, especially injuries that change the way you look, need to have a little bit more attention. Now, an infected hangnail can change your day, and you can't let that happen to your characters. But there are things like often blunt force trauma and concussions that people kind of glaze over. I think we can find a happy medium. But I want to talk about, this is a ridiculous thing. I don't know if you guys have this, but every once in a while I'll be writing something and I'll think, no, I think it's largely me. I know it is. I'm always thinking of how everything works behind the curtain that you don't see. For example, I've made this joke before, in the video game Skyrim, when you walk into any leader's throne room, they're all in the throne and they're sitting there waiting for you. In one or two of the places, they've got like a buddy talking to them. But really, they're just sitting there. And I'm like, have you been there the whole time? Did you see me coming? Do you just sit there and wait for people to come in? I have so many questions. And I was, realizing it doesn't matter. It does not matter to the game at all what they were doing before or what they do after, unless it actually affects your quest. And I was writing a story with people getting swallowed by a giant alien and realizing they don't die right away. And so they try to, they have many problems. But one of their problems is food and water, and the other problem is where they're going to poop. And I got really concerned about, well, if you're living in a creature's stomach, how do you decide where to poop? And I thought about it way too much. I think about things like this with any sort of post-apocalyptic thing, and the women are still hairless in certain places. And I'm like, why? And I know why. It's obvious why. But it's still like, I remember somebody from, somebody was arguing about sexual assault and realism in these gritty, grimdark fantasy things, and how, oh, well, that happened in the Middle Ages. And someone's like, why are their teeth perfect then? Because they would not have perfect teeth. But you're calling this horrific thing realism, but they've got perfect teeth. So then I started rereading The Stand and realizing that they talk occasionally about having to go into looted stores for supplies. But they rarely it comes up. Like always, they can go when they're traveling across the country. Everyone's okay with we have one bad gas siphoning problem. And after that, everyone's good. And they don't worry about plumbing when they go to squat in other people's houses or buildings. And that's because that's not the story. And I think it might be just my own very picky brain. It says, where are they getting the supplies they need? Where are they getting clean water? Where are they pooping? It's not viable to the story. And I realize that you're going to have to, I'm going to have to let stuff go. Because I'm pretty sure my readers don't care either. But we got, Steve says there's a scene in one of the Alien movies where someone performs abdominal surgery on herself, staples the incision closed, then goes off to fight a monster. I heard about that movie, and that was one of the reasons I didn't go. No, you just cut through all your abdominal muscles. You're not getting out of bed, let alone running after monsters. I have that problem with the end of The Princess Bride. Because it's like he's stabbed several times. But then like he magically gets the energy to jump up and fight Count Rugen. And then he doesn't have a come down. He doesn't have an adrenaline crash. He's just fine. We're going to go. We're going to escape. Here we go. I'm probably still bleeding, but that's okay. Inigo he looks very sad and sweaty and unhappy. And then he jumps off the floor and he's all better. But that worked. People didn't care. I cared. I'm the only one, pretty sure. Another thing about fictional injuries is comparing myself to these heroes and feeling inferior for getting a debilitating headache from staring at my phone too much. Yes, I can get a migraine from carrying something too heavy over my shoulders because I just get the shoulder and neck pain, and then it just becomes a migraine. So yeah, I get that. Valerie says, someone I know made a joke that sword and sorcery is when you know where people pee. Grimdark is when you know where people poo. That's good. That's a good description. Someone on Reddit made a post about someone who made a whole medieval economy and then realized it priced the hero out of heroing entirely. Yes, logistics is ignored when it comes to storytelling. And I think that's what I'm actually trying to get to with this whole podcast is I think it's the whole iceberg effect. Whereas when you do a lot of research into something, you only need to put about 10% of that research into the story, and the reader will just go along with you for the other 90 that you don't tell them. And that's why you only need to divulge a little bit of what you figured out. And logistics is one of the things. We saw the Indiana Jones with River Phoenix, I guess the Last Crusade. And I'm like, he's riding the horse along the train. He jumps off the horse, gets on the train. What about the horse? What happened to the horse? He just left the horse to die. The horse in full saddle, bridle, all that, in the middle of the desert. No rider. He just left it. No problem. Incidentally, that is the movie where I remember it because he steals almost every mode of transportation possible to steal. I don't remember hardly anything else about it, except, again, logistics, worrying about that old knight who's been living in that cave for thousands of years. What's he going to do now? I think about these things. I'm sorry. Yeah, I worried about the yeah. Exactly. Back to chat. The doctor who was in a group in Antarctica had to do her own breast cancer surgery and she survived. Oh my God. What is that real? Where's that from? What's happening? Although I keep going from point to point. I'm just all over the place today. In The Stand, if you've read the author's cut, the author's version, which adds on a bunch of characters and filler scenes. And one of the scenes is our heroes meet up with two survivors and one of them gets appendicitis. And it's like, well, we can either let him die or try to perform surgery on him, which may kill him. So let's do the surgery. And that was, logistically real, it felt like. So yeah. Crystal Briar says, I did hear a compelling argument once from a writer of military sci-fi that adrenaline in a life and death situation really is like getting a bunch of temporary hit points dumped onto you. Yes, I have heard that. And I'll buy it. But that's why it's like, with The Princess Bride, I don't see why Inigo, after he kills Count Rugen, why he doesn't then just like have a crash. But he's fine. It's like he powered through and that healed everything. And now he's all better. So if you got somebody who has a lot of energy but then crashes, that is more realistic. But does it fit the story? Like, warp factor in Star Trek means whatever works for the current episode. That's fair. There's an author, Instagram creator who made a video about how the logistics of supervillains is ignored. I've been reading Hench, I think. I've got a couple of the supervillain points of view books, and Hench is interesting because it does talk about logistics and injuries that happen to cannon fodder during supervillain and superhero battles. Okay, so we do have a confirmation about the breast cancer thing. Lee says Jerry Nelson was a doctor at the South Pole who treated herself until they could evacuate her in 1998, and she lived until 2009 when she died of cancer. Wow. So, Kay Kimmy brings it all back, thank you. How do we make injuries more realistic without begging down the story? I think that everybody does the first part well, and they talk about the pain. And if this is that kind of book, they're going to talk about the blood or crunching sounds. I think you need to look at what has happened to your hero and wonder, will they be able to do X or Y moving forward? And if you need them to do X or Y, either make the injury less serious or at least have them acknowledge that they must overcome the injury to move forward. And people are going to mention scars or injuries or things that they can see. I just remembered this. I was at a concert with a friend of mine from college when I was in college, and he had a cleft palate. But he'd also been in a bike accident. And I was walking on his right side, which had not been the part of the face to hit the pavement. And a guy walks by on his left, and he like, dude, your face. And I got mad because I'd forgotten he was all skinned up on this side of his face and thought the guy was talking about a cleft palate. But no, he was talking about all the scabs on the other side of his face. But see, even then, that's a minor injury, but you're looking, it tells a story. That's really what it all comes down to. If you injure somebody, that injury tells a story, and you have to decide whether that story fits the rest of your story. I'm actually pretty pleased with that. So the villain logistics, I guess Ian says, the video is about the Joker and how his anarchy contradicts the perfect planning and execution requirements for his capers. Yeah. Anarchy is really hard to actually pull off because someone's got to plan something sometime. So I think bringing up logistics like pooping, peeing, periods, those are indicators of we are in a situation where this is difficult. Whereas if we were living in first world lap of luxury, no one would even think to mention this. But you mention it to point out how difficult things are. But as Stephen King showed us works quite well, you can mention it once or twice, but you don't need to bring it up every time. And I think that's something I've got to learn. Because every time I let people do something that they would not be able to do in a normal setting in my books, I'm thinking, how are they able to do that? Am I going to have to explain this? I got to remember to write like I read sometimes. Like, this doesn't bother me when I'm reading. When I'm writing, I'm like, everyone's going to ask. And they probably won't. People get mad about things like the wrong caliber of bullet. And shout out to Firewriter using horses incorrectly. So I think that's all I got to say about injuries and logistics. We acknowledge that for our heroes to keep going through our fiction, they're going to have to be a little bit superhuman to deal with the injuries that they get in our adventures. But if you break someone's leg, why are you breaking their leg? Why is the story breaking their leg at that point? Because you're probably going to need to bring up the fact that they've got a broken leg later. Oh, cool. Kids Are Asleep says, a good book with logistics stuff from medievalish era is What Kings Ate and Wizards Drank by Krista D. Ball. Thank you. Thank you, Valerie. That's awesome. Yes, so many incorrect horses. I'm sorry, Firewriter. So it's you got to find a happy medium, I guess. You got to give enough to make people feel for your characters, but hold back enough to let them continue on their adventure. But just don't forget to mention it. Paul's got 9 fingers. And after like 1 or 2 of his like recovery from that, all bandaged up, it doesn't get mentioned again. And I'm trying to think about if my thumb, even my left thumb, got cut off, that would change everything. Everything. Maybe not everything, but a lot of things. I try not to burden my heroes with more than they can handle. But see, that's when they actually become heroic. Is when they can handle more things than they can handle. Because we put our heroes through stuff that we wouldn't be able to get by. Get away with, get through. Wow, my brain just turned off. Okay. Do you guys have any questions, any further questions about realism or any other suggestions, as you guys have been very helpful and chatty this stream? This has been great. If you have any other suggestions or questions, let me know. And again, if you have questions and you're listening to this later, feel free to email me, mightymur@gmail.com, and I will discuss your question on the stream, or I will answer it in email if you prefer. You just got to tell me. Putting a reminder note on my desk that says, how many fingers does Paul have? Well, it's one specific Paul in Misery, and most of the time he has 10. 10 fingers and 2 feet. By the end of the book, he has 9 fingers and 1 foot. I'm checking to see who's on Twitch. Let's see. Oh, we got a crafting stream. Series is doing making a blanket. Wow. Series is crocheting a very pretty blanket, so we will go visit. Paul Atreides always has the perfect number of fingers. True. Good to see you, Southpaw. Thanks for dropping by. And if you guys, if you want to listen to my other podcast, you can go to murverse.com. If you would like to support the stream and the show and get ad-free episodes that are earlier than everybody else gets them, you can go to patreon.com/mightymur and join the Fabulists, which is the inner circle of people who hang out on the Discord, or get some people get postcards on their birthday or their birthday month, and we just you have access to the entirety of the archive, which is now 991 episodes, I think, counting the episodes from this year. It's about 991, I'd say. Wow. Okay. But yes, that's it. Patreon.com/MightyMur. My books are found in bookstores. Just look for Mur Lafferty and you'll find them. And I am co-host and co-editor of Escape Pod. If you like short science fiction, you can get free stories every week, one free story a week at escapepod.org. And the raid call when we raid series will be Murraid. #Murraid. Just say hi and be awesome as you are here. And remember that you should be writing. The times I forget that. 900 damn episodes. Still forget to say you should be writing on the end of every one. Okay. All right, the raid is set up. Thanks for the stream and reminding me to brush my teeth. Can't give me ads. I'm just thinking about how sometimes you might actually forget an old injury disability for a while as you get used to it. Then suddenly you get reminded of it in the situation you used to be able to do. That is a very good point. You should be writing and brushing your teeth. Indeed. I'm going to take us to the last scene so we can see our credits for all the people who support the show on Patreon. So thank you very much, folks. And I'll see you next week.